You're combining the V and the U for what others would call kind of the square root shaped recovery. In other words, with the first part of it's pretty steep, but then we start to level out.
Yeah, I mean, I think was always going to be a two-speed recovery, and I think the operative word is recovery. I mean, the next few months we will see strong growth rates as we start to ease restrictions on the ability to conduct business and to go back to certain segments of the economy. But we're also, bouncing off of some pretty extreme lows, whether it's air travel or at a construction site. And so I think if you're a business leader, you think in terms of what was my revenue or level of activity before COVID-19. And when you look in that frame and lens, then I think we're talking clearly, but more of a U-shaped recovery. What
is on your dashboard right now? I mean, normally we're talking about business cycles. We have our usual metrics, jobless claims and this, but these have gotten just so not out of whack. They're just so large, and trying to figure out what's happening state by state, even, you can come to some very different conclusions. Now we have some new clusters and concerns about people pulling back on activity all over again. So what's your best read on the state of the economy right now?
Well, it's a really good question, Kelly. I mean, I think you have to look at it through two angles. I mean, I think one more so ever in my career, it's the health angle, and so we're drawing as much from epidemiology as we are from economics. I think getting some sense and looking at where the rate of infections are relative to the assumptions one has to make, because I think it's going to be surprises to the healthcare sector, either more positive or more negative in the coming months. It's really going to dictate any change in terms of the path of recovery. Right now, I think it's, our assumption is that we will clearly have a second wave, and we'll see some increases in infections in certain parts of the country and globally, but we will not need to see or experience the sort of nationwide shutdowns and activity. If that would occur, that's clearly a risk, and the shape of the recovery even becomes that much more pessimistic.
Right.
And then on the economic side, I think you just have to look at, how reticent are consumers, the more social the activity it takes to conduct it.
So let's talk about some of the policy response, fiscal and monetary, especially as we get confirmation day by day of the importance of the Fed's presence in these markets. Does more need to be done? Why am I even asking that question? We're talking about a $10 trillion Fed balance sheet at some point, and obviously a trillion's already coming our way fiscally. But what more needs to be done? What's your expectation at this point?
Great question. Again, I think, with context that the policy response of the Fed and Congress, and I would loop in other countries around the world to that matter, it's been both bold and swift. That said, I think there are some targeted measures that I think should be considered. I'm most concerned about more, preventing, sort of narrowing the risk as we go to the second half of the year. Some policy support will start to wane. That's not a criticism. I think that's more of a reality. I think there are some options that Congress could consider, such as around the employee retention credit and thinking about new automatic stabilizers that in some unfortunate scenario where the unemployment rate is not coming down in the second half of the year, but for whatever reason will start to come up again, potentially because of a second wave, you could think about taking out effective, economic insurance on the recovery, given how strong responses have been to date.
Interesting. And by that, quickly, you would mean jobless claims, or what would those stabilizers look like?
Well, what you could do is you could have the employment retention credit, and there were some revisions in the recently proposed House bill that actually caught my eye. And I think what you could do is Congress could at least consider attaching to that an on-off switch. And the on-off switch would be if the unemployment rate or jobless claims, if they're above a certain threshold, then that employee retention credit, the more generous package, is available for impaired businesses and then hence for workers. And then if the economy proceeds perhaps better than expected or according to plan, then that on-off switch is off. And so, you wouldn't need to spend the money. And that way you let, you don't force any policymaker to have perfect foresight, which I think is unreasonable in this situation. You kind of let the recovery evolve.
That's super interesting. Joe, thanks very much. Love the ideas. We appreciate it.